Bill Spencer stood alone in the cavernous expanse of his office, the late afternoon light slicing through Venetian blinds in stark golden slashes that seemed to mock his turmoil. He replayed every moment of his confrontation with Luna Baldwin in vivid, infuriating detail, her defiant stare when he'd ordered her out of his life for good, her slender form disappearing through the rain-soaked courtyard as though swallowed by the shadows themselves. He had thought banishing her would slake the fire of suspicion that had burned between them, but instead it had only fanned the embers into a blaze of regret and obsession. Bill's broad shoulders slumped. Power and wealth had always been his weapons, but this time they felt like nothing more than hollow trappings against the truth Luna had threatened to expose. In that instant of stark clarity, he vowed not to make the same mistake again. He resolved to eradicate every threat she posed. Swiftly, decisively, absolutely. And he would not go it alone. He reached for the secure line on his desk, his fingertip brushing against the cold red light that pulsed like a heartbeat. Deacon Sharp answered on the second ring, gravelly and cautious, as though sensing the brewing storm on the other end. Sheila Carter's name came next, dispatched with a curt directive, "Meet at Il Giardino tonight at 9. I have work for both of you." Deacon and Sheila arrived under a sliver of moonlight, each cloaked in motives as shadowed as the alleyways they traversed. Deacon, with his tangled history of loyalties and betrayals, looked warier than ever. Sheila, with steel in her eyes, seemed invigorated by the promise of chaos. Over the soft glow of a private table's lamp, Bill laid out the strategy. Use Deacon's knowledge of Luna's past indiscretions and Sheila's formidable cunning to unearth every concealed misstep, every secret liaison, every compromised document. Expose Luna's darkest transgressions to the world, dismantle her reputation, and reclaim his authority unchallenged. From the moment they shook on it, the three conspirators became an unlikely cabal united by desperation. Deacon scoured old contacts, dredging up whispers of deals and betrayals from Luna's youth. Fragments of her time as a bent soul in the city's underbelly, desperate enough to barter her integrity for survival. Sheila infiltrated Luna's confidants, coaxing confidences from frightened relatives and tampering with Luna's personal files at Los Angeles Memorial Hospital, where Luna volunteered in her efforts to purify her image after scandal. The evidence began to mount. Clandestine financial transfers, veiled threats exchanged via burner phones, journals that detailed Luna's moments of self-doubt and strategic manipulation. Bill soaked in every revelation like a parched man at an oasis, his determination sharpening with every shard of Luna's past exposed. He pictured the look of mortification on her face when the press swarmed her charitable gala with cameras flashing every accusation in blaring headlines. The plan was infallible. Until, in the quiet aftermath of triumph, Luna unveiled her final, most devastating card. It came in a whisper at the precise moment Bill felt most invincible. Luna was carrying his child. The revelation struck him like a physical blow, knocking the breath out of his lungs. He remembered every second of their tangled history. The passion that once ignited between them, the shared laughter in the private corners of his penthouse, the tender moments he had convinced himself were mere diversions rather than the strands that bound him to her fate. Instinct warred with pride. He should have been furious that Luna had kept the secret, but instead he felt a surge of panic, of longing, of a responsibility he had never anticipated. His world splintered. Expose her now and risk destroying an innocent life. Stand by her and surrender the power he had clawed to amass. The alliance with Deacon and Sheila, once the cornerstone of his vengeance, suddenly felt like a death trap built around his own legacy. As news of her pregnancy leaked courtesy of a defiant Luna who held every shred of evidence Bill had assembled as hostages, Los Angeles buzzed with fevered speculation. The media circus that Bill had meticulously orchestrated to disgrace Luna pivoted overnight into a frenzy of protective sentiment. Headlines shifted from Luna's lies to Bill Spencer's betrayal, painting him as the architect of a cruel vendetta against an expectant mother. Sheila watched from the sidelines with a predatory smirk, her delight in chaos undimmed, while Deacon's remorse grew palpable. He began to question whether dragging Luna through the mud had ever been justifiable. Bill, meanwhile, found himself cornered by public opinion and his own conscience. Every cliché about a man's world turned upside down crystallized in his experience. Fatherhood loomed before him like both salvation and curse, a chance at redemption entwined with the creeping dread of responsibility. In the following days, Bill moved through his office corridors like a ghost, haunted by images of Luna's defiant resilience. He remembered the gleam in her eye when she confronted Sheila's accusations and how she'd crushed the evidence with a steely grace. He recalled the moment she told him, in a trembling yet determined voice, that she would not be intimidated, that the child they shared would know the truth of both parents, one who sought domination and one who dared to hope for something more. Bill's alliance fractured under the weight of its recklessness. Sheila, sensing the tide turning against them, retreated into the shadows, already plotting her next upheaval. Deacon attempted to broker a ceasefire, urging Bill to seek reconciliation, to consider Luna's child as a bridge rather than a weapon. Yet Bill remained torn between his desire to maintain his empire and a newfound instinct to protect the fragile spark of life growing within Luna. His empire's foundations trembled, not from outside threats, but from the dawning realization that some games were meant to be unplayed, some battles forfeit before they began. Every evening, Luna walked the courtyard outside Spencer Publications, her profile framed by the dying light, her hand pressed to the swell of her belly. She bore no sign of fear. Instead, she carried an almost regal calm that infuriated Bill more than any insult. He would watch her from his office window, the distance between them loaded with all the scheming, the betrayals, the unspoken longings. He longed to close the gap, to confess that despite everything he had done, despite every plan to destroy her, a part of him had always known their story was different, that the thrill of her laughter, the strength of her convictions, had carved deeper channels into his soul than any boardroom victory. But the bitter taste of regret made his tongue numb, and pride pinned him to silence even as his heart raced with the unbidden wish to protect her. And so the drama of their entanglement reached a fever pitch. Bill's boardroom allies looked on in confusion as he publicly offered Luna concessions she did not seek, while she, in turn, navigated his overtures with wary dignity. Deacon tried to mediate, but his own allegiance frayed under the sorrow of seeing Luna punished for a child neither father wanted to claim. Sheila, ever the architect of mayhem, watched from a distance, her smile unreadable, as if waiting for the moment she could hurl another grenade into their lives. The suspense became unbearable. Would Bill sacrifice his empire to embrace fatherhood? Could Luna ever forgive him for dragging her into a vendetta? Would the child to come be born into peace or further chaos? In the final tableau, Bill stood once more in the light of the office he had once ruled with iron certainty. Luna approached, the soft rustle of her gown a counterpoint to the storm of his thoughts. She touched his hand, not with supplication, but with the quiet authority of a woman who knew what she wanted. He looked into her eyes and saw both the wounds of their shared past and the promise of a fragile future. The world beyond those walls hummed with the echoes of their saga, but in that charged moment, only two people existed. A man who had learned that power meant nothing without love, and a woman who had proven herself invincible, carrying within her the next chapter of their story. Bill exhaled, ready at last to rewrite the ending, to forge a new alliance not built on schemes and secrets, but on the most potent truth of all, that the fiercest battles often give birth to the greatest hope. Luna's descent began on a night when the moon hid behind a veil of clouds, and even the streetlights seemed to shudder in their posts, casting long, quivering shadows across the pavement. Every step she took was haunted by memories of Finn's gentle voice, the way his laughter had once felt like sunlight on her skin, and lately those recollections had twisted into something razor-sharp, cutting away any hesitation until nothing remained but obsession. She no longer recognized the woman staring back at her in the cracked mirror of her apartment, pale cheeks hollowed by sleepless nights, eyes rimmed with red fury and yearning. In her mind's eye, Finn was both salvation and the forbidden fruit she could not resist, and the more she tried to release him, the tighter his image wrapped around her heart like barbed wire. Sheila watched her son's growing alarm with a mother's dread that turned quickly into fury. Finn, torn between compassion for Luna's pain and his loyalty to Steffi, had begun to avoid phone calls and his home address, leaving messages unanswered and doors unanswered. Sheila, recalling the horrors Luna had once wrought upon their lives, feared not only for Finn's sanity, but for her own safety. Late one evening, she cornered Deacon in the shadowed foyer of Il Giardino, where he'd come seeking refuge from another failed scheme. His eyes widened as Sheila's words tumbled out. Luna's obsession, her fraying grip on reality, the threat she posed not only to Finn and Steffi, but to anyone who stood between her and the man she claimed as hers. "We have to send her away," Sheila insisted, voice low and fierce. "We have to make her leave Los Angeles for good." Deacon's brow furrowed. He knew the darkness that lurked in Luna's heart, but he also remembered the compassionate woman she once was. Yet under Sheila's steely gaze, he agreed. Anything to protect Finn, anything to stop the spiral that could only end in tragedy. They devised a plan that was as cruel as it was cunning, stage evidence of wrongdoing too damning to contest, dredge up old rumors of Luna's past that no jury could ignore, frighten her into fleeing the city. Deacon, with his network of streetwise contacts, would leak stories to dubious tabloids. Sheila would curry favor with the police brass to secure patrols around Luna's usual haunts. Every detail fell into place over a week of whispered phone calls and secret meetings in dilapidated warehouses where Deacon laid out each step like pieces on a chessboard. But Luna, sharper than they imagined and driven by a desperation that made her fearless, saw the trap only when it was sprung. She confronted Deacon in the dead of night on a deserted pier, her silhouette stark against the lapping waves. His apology dissolved into pleading as she spat accusations he could not refute, eyes blazing with betrayed trust. From the pocket of her leather jacket, she pulled a small pistol, acquired in the haze of her unraveling mind, and leveled it at him, her voice a hiss of rage and heartbreak. Deacon froze, heart pounding, but the bullet never left the chamber. Instead, Luna's grip wavered, and in that flicker of hesitation she vanished into the fog, leaving him trembling on the planks, bloodless yet shaken to his core. Still they believed, until the night Finn returned home late to find Steffi sketching gowns in the studio. Her auburn hair fell in soft waves over her shoulders, her eyes alight with the creative spark he adored, but as he stepped into the open doorway, his phone buzzed insistently. He answered, hearing Deacon's strained voice. Luna was on the warpath, she had a gun, and she was coming for him next. Abandoning all caution, Finn raced to Steffi's side, insisting she hide in the locked guest room while he confronted his former love. But Steffi, Proud and unbroken even after the turmoil Luna had already unleashed, refused to cower. "I deserve to stand by you," she whispered, touching his arm. He kissed her wrist, hard in his throat, and bolted for the front door, leaving Steffi to follow, or so he hoped. Down the hallway, he found Luna waiting beneath the flickering porch light, rain starting to fall in thick sheets. Her eyes were wild, tears streaking her cheeks, and her voice trembled as she confessed that love was not a choice, but an imperative. "If I can't have you, no one will." Finn tried reason, pleading, soothing, reminding her of the woman she used to be, but Luna drew back, gun raised, and a deafening crack shattered the night air. Finn dove to the ground as the bullet tore through the front window. Inside, Steffi lifted her head, horror freezing her breath as a second shot rent the silence, the glass spraying around her like deadly confetti. She crumpled to the floor, a scorching pain ripping through her side, and Finn's scream pierced the storm. He burst into the house, cradling Steffi in his arms, tears mingling with rain as he pressed towels against her wound. Luna stood at the threshold, chest heaving, the weapon trembling in her hand. Finn abandoned Steffi for a moment to race toward Luna. Rage, desperation, love warping his voice. "You're hurting her." But Luna's gaze snapped back to Steffi, broken yet burning with possessive fury, and for that moment Finn saw not the woman he'd once known, but a stranger wielding power over life and death. The shriek of ambulance sirens cut through the storm, and as paramedics dragged Steffi onto a stretcher, Luna collapsed to her knees, sobs racking her frame. Finn held her as they cuffed her wrists, his own tears unaware until they burned his cheeks. Word of the shooting exploded across LA, a love triangle turned violent, a wife fighting for her life, an obsessive ex behind bars. Sheila watched the news on a muted TV, agony and triumph conflicting in her heart. Deacon, tormented by guilt, slipped away from his dingy apartment to the hospital ER where Finn paced, hands clenched, until he spotted Steffi's pale form under the bright gurney lights. Before Finn could banish him from the hallway, Deacon stepped forward, voice thick, offering to testify not against Luna's crime. He could not betray Sheila so far, but to explain the hell that drove Luna to this point, to peel back the layers of conspiracy and betrayal so Finn understood that saving Luna's life might be the only way to save his own soul. Finn shook his head. Steffi was bleeding out, his wife, the center of his world, and Deacon broke under the weight of his own conscience. He whispered the dire secret. Sheila had orchestrated the plot to remove Luna, had pulled every string to isolate her, and his own loyalty to her had blinded him until he saw the horror in Luna's eyes the moment she realized the full extent of their treachery. Finn hurled himself back into Steffi's side, gripping her hand as the trauma surgeon laid bare the odds. Internal bleeding, a shattered rib puncturing her lung, her survival depended on immediate surgery. Finn leaned over her, voice raw. "I love you. I'm here." Steffi's eyes fluttered open, saw Luna's face on every news screen, the cuffs, the tears, horror and pity warring in her gaze. "You have to choose," she whispered, voice thin, "between me and her." Finn closed his eyes, tears slipping down, the choice tearing him apart. In that instant, Deacon intervened, penniless, disgraced, but driven by newfound resolve. He confronted Sheila in the hallway, denouncing her manipulation, threatening to expose every dark deed unless she called off the vendetta he had helped engineer. Sheila's lips curled, but a flicker of regret crossed her eyes. She nodded once, and Deacon slipped to the operating room doors just as Finn pushed them open. Steffi lay pale on the operating table, Finn's kneeling form crumpled in prayer. Luna, brought in under guard, was placed in a chair nearby, her wrists bruised, body trembling. When Finn noticed her, his grief broke into two paths. One led to the wife he had nearly lost, the other to a woman drowning in obsession. Surgeons wheeled Steffi away, and Luna reached out, voice barely audible. "I'm sorry." Finn's sorrow swallowed him, but he remembered Deacon's words. Luna was a casualty of Sheila's scheme as much as anyone. He approached Luna's chair, eyes blazing with compassion and resolve. He knelt beside her, touching her hand lightly. "You need help," he said, steadier than he felt. "But first, she needs you to let her go." Luna's tears fell silent as Finn stood, facing the looming doors that hid Steffi's fate. He turned to the guards and spoke with quiet authority. He would vouch for Luna's eventual release into treatment, under strict supervision, if they allowed him to stay by Steffi's side. The triad of conflict, Luna's madness, Sheila's manipulation, Finn's loyalty, culminated in a moment of fragile surrender. Luna closed her eyes, nodded so faintly that Finn almost missed it, and the guards led her away. Sheila, summoned by Deacon's betrayed condition, arrived in time to hear Finn's terms. Luna must be evaluated, treated, and if possible redeemed, her path to justice tempered by necessity of healing. Sheila's proud posture wilted. She realized the monster her fear had helped create. Deacon dropped to his knees, tears of relief and shame mingling, and Finn placed a hand on his shoulder. A gesture of acceptance that shattered the last barrier between them. Moments later, the doors whooshed open as Steffi emerged on a stretcher, bandaged but alive. Finn rose, heart pounding, and Claudia, Steffi's sister, ushered him to her side. As he took Steffi's hand, their eyes met in a vow neither would ever break. Across the room, Luna sat in a sterile, white corridor, stripped of glamour but no less poignant, and when her gaze met Finn's, it held a sorrow beyond words. A recognition that love, unchecked, could become the deadliest obsession of all. In the days that followed, trials would loom, secrets would unravel further, and each player, Finn torn between compassion and devotion, Luna seeking redemption beyond her crimes, Sheila battling the guilt of her machinations, Deacon striving for atonement, would discover that the line between protector and betrayer, between love and possession, is thinner than a bullet's edge. And in that space where fate and choice collide, the legacy of their bonds would be forged anew, tempered by blood, betrayal, and the fragile hope of forgiveness.